So after we had received the bottle of very special glue, we sailed on out of the reef, and pretty shortly after we left the reef, uh, all of a sudden the ocean caught fire.
Yep.
Uh,
Yep.
What?
Yep.
Like a giant circle, like the water was on fire, the ship was on fire, um, the ship was damaged, and the prisoners revolted. They knocked out Tara, I think. I remember them hurting an NPC we cared about a lot. And Sato, Dailu, and Vinaya ran below to deal with that, while Orin and Vane stayed and started trying to put the fire out around the ship. And Sato knocked out the captain.
Right, Dailu was putting out fires with like.
Dailu did a little bit of everything. So Dailu ran below first, I think, and Sato knocked out the captain of the pirates we had captured, and then Dailu and Vinaya yelled at them to fix the darn ship. And this was why it was even more urgent than it had been with the Sahaugen. It was like, hey, the ocean has just caught fire. Is now really the time? Is now the time that you want to try to sink our ship and fight our crew, or maybe cool it? And after that, they joined our crew and chilled out. So basically, the ship was damaged. We were able to put the fire out pretty quickly, but the ship had sustained some bad burns.
I kind of remember this for a change. I remember jumping into the water to repeatedly cast purify food and drink to like cleanse the flammable oil out of like 1 cubic foot of water at a time.
Yeah, we figured out that there was some kind of oil slick that had ignited.
Yeah.
Yep. And Vane spent the entire fight using Spring's Caprice to douse small parts of the fire at a time.
Right.
Yep. And then the rest of it was just like fanning flames / patching holes in the ship. So the ship was damaged enough that we had to stop and not move for a day while repairs could be made.
Yep. And we knew that this was clearly an intentional trap that we had sailed into.
Yeah.
Yes.
Meant to wound us.
And stop us for a little while. Yeah. And then as we were waiting in place, we were also like ready for a fight then. And I remember we then saw a ship on the horizon and we almost just fucking went in.
3 ships.
Like it was
3 ships, each with multiple mangonels and several ballistas.
Yeah.
I remember talking to Jared about like, okay, I need to know when they're close enough that I can teleport in and I can cast fireball on the inside and burst into flames and I can go over here. And I remember Jared saying like, you need to know they haven't fired on you yet.
And that they were all flying pirate flags.
Yeah, and so Devin was like, all right, I'll wait.
Vane was like,
teleported to destroy everyone immediately.
And Vane was like looking at us like, why are we not shooting? Why are we letting these pirates approach us?
Vane the whole time is just like, guys, are you seeing this? Are you seeing the same thing that I'm seeing with the pirates approaching? And we're all like, pirates? I say we. I mean,
that might have a lot more Dailu than Orin or Vinaya in that look.
Yeah. So they approach and they don't attack us, and they signal that they're gonna like send somebody aboard, and we're like, okay. And they sent a party. I think it was a party of. It wasn't all water genasi. Naramani is a water genasi. They come aboard, and the person who comes aboard is a water genasi woman, and then I think a Kenku, and one like a couple other people. And the water genasi introduces herself as Captain Vuero. Dailu reads her mind and gets that she is not Captain Vuero, and that this is Captain Vuero's first mate, Naramani, and that Captain Vuero is on the other ship. Now, an amazing, wonderful thing that happens at this point is that I remember at least Oren, the only sailor in the group, rolling to see if he knew who these people were and not getting a very good number, and Dailu rolling a crit to know who these pirates were, a thing that Dailu has no justification for knowing. And so the justification that Jared came up with on the fly was these pirates at some point, Captain Vuero robbed Dailu's moms, who are very rich merchants, who would have had ships going back and forth between continents, and that the thing Dailu knew about them, less important for now and more important for later probably, was that that when Vuero had robbed her parents, Vuero had not taken any prisoners or harmed anyone. The crew of the merchant ship that she had raided had just been like, yeah, she came aboard and she asked us to give her all of the stuff, and it seemed like a good idea, like a magically good idea, and we just gave her all of the stuff, and then we sort of snapped out of it a while later and went, oh no, we gave her all of our cargo for no reason. So Dailu knew who Captain Vuero was based on Vuero having robbed her moms, and Jared described this as being 10 years before, like 10 years in the past, which works out to Dailu being 17 at the time. And what I took from that was like, age 17, given Dailu's relationship with her parents, is about the exact right time for Dailu to be like, oh my god, you robbed my moms? I love you. You're my favorite person in this world. Wow, you stole all of my mom's stuff. You're the coolest person I've ever heard of. So Dailu was a big fan of these pirates, and we decided to parlay with them, and they came below, and I think we prepared them like a super nice feast.
I think we just like cake and shit. Like we had Star Anise brought out nice food, and they were kind of weirded out by it, and
they were like poisoning us.
This is where I believe I introduced. Vane was there and Dailu was there and I was there, and I was the captain.
Yeah.
And I introduced. I said, "Sorry, where are my manners? This is Vane Phanafraxis and Dailu Minthiliara." Just kind of know. At this point, I had been informed that this wasn't Captain Vuero, and that Captain Vuero had robbed Dailu's family before. And I think it was here and not on their ship that this happened.
To demonstrate that I know that we're not all who I say we are, I will insult my close friends.
Yeah. And basically, the two people in our party that care the most, I think Dailu is super big about her name and not a huge fan of Vane at the time. And Vane is just super huge about his family name. And so both of them, through gritted teeth, yes, nice to meet you.
Yeah.
You've probably seen Vane's family flag on the merchant ships.
Yeah. This was like the most perfect way Oren could have united Dailu and Vane in this moment. Was he could not have made both of them angrier at the same time. Like, saying the words Dailu and Theliara. So Dailu's just sitting there like, how fucking dare you? And Vane is over there like, taking a deep, deep breath. Already uncomfortable because there's pirates sitting at our table being served cake for some reason.
Just glaring blood and daggers.
And Dailu reading their mind heard a lot of kind of trepidation and worry, like, okay, I need to do this right. I need to get this. If I fuck this up, I'm in big trouble. Like, they were very nervous and clearly a little bit green. And so once Oren had that information, it was very much kind of just like a cat with a toy, just kind of, where can I poke to get this to crumble? And we agreed to we agreed to go over to the other ship and talk.
Also, very important, sort of, is that Dalu, immediately upon realizing that A, these are pirates, and B, these are the pirates that robbed my mom, hit on Naramani constantly.
Mm-hmm.
That's all. That's the important thing I had to say.
It is important.
Dalu, upon being like, this is the first mate of the pirates who robbed my mom's, was just like a monster.
And for Vane, very important thing, and I can't remember it's right now as a way to tip your hand to be like, gotcha, or if it was later, but you do reveal that you lied about Dailu and Vane's names.
I think that was so we
Oh,
get
yeah.
invited over to the other ship, and
Gotcha.
and Dailu knows pretty quickly who's actually Captain Guero because Dailu still has charges in the Reed Mines thing. And so we go into a meeting where I think that is the Captain Guero is introduced as the first mate, and Naramani is still Guero. And then I forget exactly how it goes, but I know that amongst that conversation, we kind of reveal like, hey, we know who you are, and we know who you are, and we know a lot of stuff because we can read your minds. And this is actually Dailu Phantophraxis and Vaneman Telyara. At which point I believe AJ went, like, it's just like Vane lets out a visible like actual tension in his gut from just holding in, knowing that the information is incorrectly out there in the world somewhere.
Dalu pulls out at the same time a picture of her family crest and is like, yeah, you might remember me. You might remember my mom's who you stole stuff from. The coolest thing that's ever happened.
Which at first I think was taken as like sarcastic, like you're trying to start a fight, but very quickly became like, oh,
No,
okay, no, weirdly
genuine.
she's into that. Okay, that's fine.
I also I don't know how much I made this obvious, but I assume it had to have been somewhat obvious because Jared manipulated this later, was that Dalu does in fact think that Naramani is very charming, but has probably a much, 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 much larger crush on Captain Guero herself, who is much, much, much older, and just a cool, grizzled pirate lady. A human, which I remember us noting was like not necessarily like surprising in the grand scheme of the world, but for this region was less common. There aren't that many humans.
Yeah, on the ocean, just because a lot of sailors come from Mekuna, it's definitely more heavily warforged or Genasi or Gnome, and you don't see a lot of other races as captains. You see them, on ships and stuff, but yeah, for them to be a captain, that was kind of like a cool kind of a thing.
Yeah. Yeah, she is cool. Cool, Captain Guero.
And so through the talks, we learned that they set that trap for us because they saw that we were navigating the Ghost Reef, and like no one has ever navigated the Ghost Reef in living memory before, and so they wanted to know how we did that. And through conversation and kind of some back and forth, please fill in anything that y'all remember. I just know that we kind of through some checks and some understandings, it came to be known that like, oh, that's right. We talked them into like, okay, we have a map, and we will give you that map because you don't like the fleet. Huh?
A copy of it.
Yeah, okay, we'll give you a copy of the map. Because you are clearly not, fans of the fleet, and neither are we at the moment. If you trade our ship for one of your ships as well, so we got to upgrade our ship and get a bigger ship.
Yeah. Although I feel like I want to note.
This was my idea, and I'm proud of it.
I want to note a couple of things there that I think are important, which is I feel like you partially inserted that they don't like the fleet, but like
Well,
you were like,
pirates,
how
so
how
by
do you feel about the fleet? And they're like, they're a fleet. They sail around the ship. They got stuff that we can take. It's not the greatest, but they're a fleet. And you're like, but how do you feel about the fleet? Like, how do you feel?
We were able to pull from them, though. I think the big thing was like they weren't like, yeah, we're aligned with them. It was kind of like they do their thing and we do illegal things, but they weren't like actively fighting the fleet, but they also definitely weren't allies, and so that was kind of the point where it's like, okay,
I think
we're not gonna get reported for this.
Yeah, I think that's where that's basically what I got from it was they're not strictly allies.
Yeah.
But I didn't feel like they committed to much more than that in that discussion.
No,
Um,
yeah, but I think but that's kind of what I was hoping for, which is kind of like cool. These are amoral middlemen pirates that their
I can
allegiance is
trust
to
with my
coin, and I
life.
can work with that.
Yeah.
And the other thing was the ship trade was not like a big loss for them either because they had a lot of use
Right.
for our ship too because it was like a smaller, faster little ship, but we
With
wanted
enchanted sails.
with enchanted
That's right.
sails. But we wanted the bigger, stronger ship because we
Right.
at this
We knew we were gonna be fucking actually doing some battles with even bigger ships, and our little dinghy was not gonna cut it.
Yeah.
Little did
Enchanted
they
sails,
know,
no.
ever full sails were a limited, useful commodity.
I was gonna
The
say.
ocean.
No.
We
Yeah,
got the
we
we
were
got the
looking
better
at
end of this
that.
deal in the long run.
Wow.
Um,
Oh, and one other character to note here is no, what's his name?
the
I forgot
Kenku.
his name. The Kenku, yeah. We have it written down in the doc, but um, Guero kind of had two right hands. Naramani, who was her first mate on her ship, and then
Aroke, Kenku
Aroke.
Mage.
I think it was Aroke.
Aroke.
Aroke, who was the Kenku mage who came aboard with Naramani, and he was the captain of the ship that we wound up trading from them, Lim's right hand. And I just remember Dylan reading his mind at one point, and it was just full of math. Like he came aboard our ship and was like looking at the specs and like doing a bunch of math, and Dylan was just like never read his mind again. It was like,
Yes.
I don't care what's in there. I can't deal with this.
Ugh.
That's why of Guero's two right hands, she flirted with Naramani.
Specifically, he was like adding up like what everything was worth, right? It was like
Mhm.
like a diving into an accountant's brain as they
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, Guy was horrified and chose to only read Naramani, so that's from then on. Oh, also, I remember when we first talked to Vuero, the actual Vuero, in the like parlay we had with them, she and Naramani were speaking in Thieves' Cant to each other, which is how we learned
Oh,
those
yeah.
words. But because Dailu both speaks Thieves' Cant and was reading their minds, she was able to like translate that and figure out like their version of Thieves' Cant,
Nice.
which I thought was a cool detail of like it would
Yeah.
make sense that there would be a lot of different versions of Thieves' Cant, and it would take a moment to sort of understand the dialect, but once you knew sort of like the patterns that were being placed in there, you could kind of figure out what was being said.
We went into there with like, hey, just so you know, you have no secrets.
Yeah. And we're very invasive, and we trust no one.
But once we did kind of agree on this deal and kind of settle into things, I remember I took some time, Oren took some time with Guerrero and was like helping with the map, but also like noting out like, okay, so here we found some Gouth. Here you're gonna find it's called Dilu's Quarry. It's a giant's corpse. If you go
Aw.
here, we had one red cap still, and just kind of like making sure all the information that we had set up was like known to them, and also to make a point of like. This is a new landmark, and this is its name, and it became Jared mentioned like once the business was done, it was much more friendly and relaxed and open, and there was very little like
Yeah.
he's like there's very little worry that you have that this is like sneaky shit anymore. Like you guys are now on the same page as like partners for the moment.
Yeah. And then we threw a party.
Yes.
Hell yeah.
Big party that included, I think, Vanaya going giant-sized and carrying the
Well,
Black Razor
Yeah,
box.
because we had to swap ships, which meant we had to move Black Razor in the impossible to lift cement filled box. So, which none of us are strong enough to lift on our own, but using a potion of growth, which doubles you. I don't know. It increases your strength quite a bit, and it was enough to let me lift it. So, I, turn giant. Everyone is like moving across, left or right on the ship to like counterbalance as I'm picking it up and walking over and moving and like at the same and the pirates are just like we don't ask questions, everybody's got their thing because they've got someone walking from Lim's right hand onto their new ship like blindfolded carrying some kind of glass vessel with people like carefully shielding them and
Everyone's got at least one.
Because Jared pulled that just out of the air. Because we stopped and we're like, "Is this? Do we need to do this secretly? Is this weird?" They're like, "No. Everybody's got they come out. Yeah, it was a glass vase where it seemed like everyone else could look at it, but for some reason the person carrying it was blindfolded, and I had just a small cloth over the top of it, and they walked it from their ship over onto the new ship as we moved our mysterious super heavy box." And it was just known that we weren't going to ask each other about this weird thing.
That's
that was
great.
being
Everyone's got a black razor.
Everyone's got one super cursed object on their ship. I remember that because we are little shits, even though Jared was clearly making this up on the spot and there was not a deeper thing about it, I did immediately read their minds to see if I could find out what it was, and just got from the person carrying like, "Don't drop it, don't drop it, don't drop it."
Yeah.
So we'll find out what that was someday, I'm sure.
I hope so.
Sure, Jared that it exists in the world and have him drop stats for it.
I don't think we've mentioned this up to this point, but it sort of becomes relevant in terms of like us being sneaky and doing parlay later. There was a understood culture of like if two ships meet, the bigger ship hosts the crew of the smaller ship, and you like parlay and come aboard and
This is
specifically among the fleet, though.
Yeah, that's a
among the
fleet
fleet.
thing.
But we also did it with these pirates, and I believe they hosted us because they were the bigger ship.
How do you feel about the fleet? No, not big on the fleet. How do you feel about their parties?
Actual conversation about it, for sure. We hosted they hosted a hell of a party.
There's one last big story thing I think we should cover before, or page worth.
We
of
didn't
stuff
say the
that's in
ship's
there.
name, which is the new ship's name is Lim's right hand. So we transacted the witch's curse for Lim's right hand.
The other important thing is that during the party we were having, Dailu made out with Naramani. That's it.
Very important.
At least as far as we know. I think it was Dailu made a charisma roll, and based on the results, Jared said it goes well when Dailu went to like flirt with Naramani some more. So I've interpreted that as they smooched, and then the next day it was like, all right, farewell. I'm a pirate, and you're an adventurer off to go probably die on some shipwreck.
It'll never work out between us.
Dailu's like, I am now a pirate, and I have a far-flung love affair with another pirate, and off I go. This is all the effort I need to put into this.
This is pretty much, I mean, you are not wrong, because I think of Dailu as the kind of person who, flirts readily, but then as soon as she sort of catches someone in her net, goes, oh god, what do I do with this? Oh no.
I'm only interested in catch and release relationships.
I don't think she's ever had a long-term relationship because she's just kind of like, oh, that's a lot of responsibility. Okay, put that down. So in a way, this is her ideal. Like, I got to make out with the first mate of the pirate who robbed my mom's, and now, oh no, I gotta sail away. I'll probably never see her again, but what a good story. To tell Thane when he regains consciousness.
Super unfortunate for Naramani, though, just to be referred to even after being made out as the first mate of the pirate that I adore.
The person I'm actually attracted to.
Whoops. Yeah.
Anyway, you were saying, Devin, something about importance.
That was very important. So we set sail. As we're sailing, winter storm. Do we have a direction at this point?
I
Um,
actually think that Vuero might have given us the direction because
I
Vuero mysteriously said when we were asking stuff about the fleet, like, I don't remember exactly what it was, but it was something to the tune of like, well, if you want to know what's going on with the fleet, you should listen to what the Warforged have to say.
Oh,
That's right. Okay, but we get the island that we go to from this next part. So as we're headed that direction, do we find the Warforged before we get the giant story or after?
I forgot about the giant story.
Giant
I
story.
think we ended the session finding the Warforged, right?
Mm.
Okay, then yeah. So as we're headed just in the direction that Werewolf gives us,
I feel like Wave was calling you in a direction at this point. They were
that
like,
may have been it.
"Hey, that's the way." But maybe I'm off by a little bit.
I don't remember, but I'm gonna read through these and we'll see if something jogs loose. So stop me if
It
it.
looks like from this, am I right in thinking, Paul, that the giant story happened while you were
That's
in
correct.
the
Yeah.
session? Yeah,
never
so I
mind
think
then.
we,
Okay,
I
so
think
then
we
we.
ended with the Warforged.
Oh, okay. Sorry, I couldn't tell what was notes of the thing and what was notes of the other thing. Okay, so
I think this whole page is notes of you guys like, hey, we got so much freaking information.
well, that's what I was saying. So when you hear when Winterstorm gives us the giant story, were you there for that, or was this us retelling it?
I think that's you guys retelling it to me.
Okay. Maybe this was. I
Yeah,
don't remember.
because
Maybe this was while we were hanging out with the pirates.
Yeah, because this note on the fleet is reinstituting Warforged slavery. I definitely was not there for that.
Then that
yeah,
one
it's
we
in
that
between the 2 points. So that sounds like us yelling things at Paul about what happened last session.
Yeah.
That's really trying to get it down. So okay, so the things we learned are that the fleet is reinstituting Warforged
Wait,
slavery,
whoa,
which is
one sec.
Wait,
You're skipping over something super important, which is we left the party boat pirate stuff. Got that ominous finger gunning statement of "Listen to the Warforged, and then
that was
pirates
that was
fade into the
Guero?
distance as we leave.
Where?
Yes.
Yeah.
And we start heading in a direction for some reason. For some reason, we were going in this direction. Wave or Vuero pointed us this way. And we see a shipwreck, basically a ruined ship. We approach the ruined ship. We find one survivor, a Warforged, stranded in the shipwreck, and we get them on board the ship. And we start talking to him. And he has a
His
name.
name is Tempo.
his name is Tempo, and I don't remember a lot about this, but that's critically where we get the information that the fleet is reinstituting Warforged slavery, as we regurgitate to Paul in bulk info dump at the top of this page.
yeah, because I think we've talked about this before, but in Mekuna, there's kind of one of those. One of the stories of its past is kind of the ancient shame of the Warforged used to be in servitude, and almost. I think was it only Oddly that started as a like a golem type thing, or is that all Warforged kind of were created in that way and then gained sentience?
I feel like I can't speak for Jared's overall vision for the Warforged, especially because Oddly was relatively young. Like the story of the Warforged goes back a really long time to having been part of like how the continent of Mekuna became like a blasted land. But the Genasi and the gnomes created the Warforged, draining substantially on the continent's resources and partially blighting the land to do so. And then at some point, the Warforged either gained or made it clear that they had always had sentience, and became independent. But what we essentially learned was that the Warforged had always been blamed for the blighting of the land, and that there were some very old, dormant semi-dormant but very ugly prejudices against the Warforged from the Genasi and the gnomes, and that the new rulers of the fleet were stoking those fires again, and had had basically renewed the focus on our terrible, our blighted land. It's all the Warforged fault that this happened, and they still deserve to be subjugated based on this ancient thing that happened centuries ago, at least centuries ago. I don't remember if we've learned exactly how long ago.
I think it's one of those things that is like old enough that we don't have an exact date. It's just kind of an origin story kind of for the continent as it exists now. It's not like there's not history really before that point. It's kind of like some big cataclysm kind of glassed this whole continent, and it's associated with the Warforged. And I think part of the association is that magic destroyed the land, and at the height of magic was also kind of coincided with the Warforged creation and all of that stuff, as whatever civilization there reached its peak, and then as they destroyed themselves, the association was made with the Warforged showed up and everything went to shit, and now so it's their fault.
Yeah, and I might be misreading it, but the way that Jared's always talked about it implied to me that cataclysm, while history, is recent history. Gnomes might still be alive from prior to when that happened, is what it kind of felt like. The pain was really viscerally recent, ancestrally so.
We should ask, because I thought it was the opposite of that. I thought it was it's been this way for a really long time.
Okay, maybe I'm crazy, but it always sounded like a recent pain.
Sorry, one thing to back that up from Age's perspective is that this is skipping ahead a little bit in terms of information we received, but Riffraff and Trespasser are, I believe, among the younger of the weapons we have found. The farthest back in terms of dates that we've gotten was 500 years. And Riffraff was created before the destruction of Mekuna. So it's a long time ago, but I think it's less than a millennium ago.
Okay, I may have just been pushing that back farther than it actually was.
Yeah, and we don't know exactly how old Riffraff and Trespasser are, but Riffraff had more information about the creation of the Warforged. So they were definitely around when that happened.
But the big thing is, either way, the powers that be that are holding the fleet now are using kind of the Warforged as the reason things are bad and the thing that can be fixed that will, now that we're in charge, this is how we're going to put things right. And are being used as a crutch for that. Did anything else happen in between that and the winter storm moment, or do those kind of coincide?
I think they coincided.
So, at some point, as we're sailing or as we're putting this Warforged down below to rest, Winter Storm comes out onto the ship up near the Scout has left, but I think that's okay.
That's fine.
Comes out near the is sitting up on the railing near the helm, and we learn that right now we're not talking to Winter Storm. We're talking to Ingrid Nervhivder. I knew how to say it back then, and I was so proud of myself.
Ingrid Nervhivder?
Nervhivder, I think, who is a giant, and they tell us the story of the story of the giants of the past. So the giants once ruled the world. They were the dominant race of creature on the planet, whatever we call the only 3 known continents of this area. And that while they were ruling, all of the other creatures of the land kind of banded together to defeat them. Dragons, fae, demons, aberrations, literally everything teamed up to overthrow the giants who were in charge of things. Wow,
I
Paul,
feel,
we really gave you this out of order.
I
I'm
feel,
so
I feel
sorry.
like we also
That's on you.
importantly, I feel like we checked on that part, and we learned that like those were extra planar forces. Which
Oh, gotcha.
now with that information, I'm looking at the dragons entry in that list. I'm like, oh, hmm.
Um, but yeah, but they had been, and some of this I think is also probably a little bit less because we learned some of this from the journals that we'll have to get from Jared to get the full thing, and next time we can do a read through of it. But basically, this was the war that the giants have been talking about in the journals, where the all of these things had risen up to overthrow them, and they had called out to the gods for help, and no one had answered. Um, and the ones that remained fell back to an island, and had a child who taught them. The holy ones who had been trying to reach out to the other gods and had failed, um, killed themselves into the ocean, walked out into the ocean, and were kind of killed across the rocks and committed suicide in shame, having not been able to get the gods to help them. The giants that remained had a child who taught them how to craft wave, and it would. They were told that it would be used by the little ones, which us, the races of now, in the only war that mattered against the gods that wouldn't answer them. But they had to die to forge it. Wave thinks he's of the god of roads, but Tracy, actually, in your notes, I think you wrote this down. Do you have the name of the five gods that they followed?
Yeah, I
I've
do.
got it right here.
Me too.
Oh,
It's Battle, Glory, Stone, Light.
the names, but they're also names which I have.
Oh, okay,
Hang on.
sorry.
Blah blah blah. Where is it? Yeah, so Runar is the giant god of battle. Roanar is glory. Halvard is stone. Stigger is light. And Iroa is time. And I remember we were trying to determine if any of if there was any clear mapping between those five and the five god kings: strife, gifts, law, roads, and shadow.
I think we rolled high and we were able to determine that they did correspond with
Yes.
I'm not sure
not
that was even a roll. But I wrote down some possible correspondence in here.
Yeah, each one could loosely be translated to fit over to one of the other
Yeah.
ones. But the one that really stuck out, because it's the one that is Wave that is talking about here, is the god of light, is the king of roads. And so we were able to pull from this that the gods that the giants had reached out to in the far, far past were the five gods that are still ruling now, and that the war that they were fighting was against the gods of the Torchline, and that Wave was crafted to win the only war that mattered, which is the war against the five gods of the Torchline. So where Wave thought that they were a relic created by the god of roads, this telling is saying that Wave was actually created to fight the god of roads and to fight the five gods that wouldn't answer the giants' call, which are now the main pantheon.
And I remember you putting some pressure on Wave here, and like asking him what was the
Yes.
first things it remembered, and like where was it forged, and it being like I was crafted in a big mountainous temple with monuments to the god of roads all over on the inside, with a glorious altar inside, I think. Do you remember that?
Yeah. Well, they were able to recall a place, but all of this information to them was like not only new but extremely worrying, and to the point where they're like, "Well, this has to be a lie. This has to be. There's no way. I'm not for the god of roads. Like, of course I'm for the god of roads, but also in a way that was like, Jared's very good at acting, so his tone was very much like that can't be right, and also like absolute terror that this might be correct and that they've been wrong this whole time. And so we decided that we were going to head to that island, Wave's birthplace. I forget if Wave just knew or if we got that information from the giant, or it was some amongst these two things happening. We got a destination to head towards, which is where Wave was forged, and we made our way in that direction. As we made our way there, we hit a extremely dense fog, and it began to snow, which is really weird for this area and on the ocean. And our crew quality dropped to 9.
It dropped to 9 because Diley rolled really bad. I remember this. This was we all had to make checks for the different like roles that we were filling within the crew. Which this may have been the first time that the Frost Daggers were all like called to actually do jobs on the
It
ship.
might be.
And I remember Dilo and Thane were basically crew overseers trying to keep people in line, and Dilo super flunked an intimidation check to keep the crew in line.
Part of it was also before we had gotten ourselves to a point where we had a little bit more crew than we needed for the size of our ship. But this ship being larger, we now got to the point where that was part of the reason everyone had to have a role, is because we now didn't have quite enough crew to man this size of a ship effectively.
Yeah.
And so to keep crew quality from just continually going down, everyone had to be doing something all the time.
That's right. I think, yeah, that was the impetus for it being like, okay, you gotta actually, like, you're not officers necessarily, but, like, you need to be taking on some serious jobs at this point.
I think us heading towards Wave's birthplace through snowing fog on the ocean is probably a good place to stop for it this evening.
Yeah,
The next
for
part we
sure.
get into
Yeah.
is actually there.
Sounds good.
And this was also, end of this coming session was the point where we took a hiatus at the beginning of quarantine.
Shit, that's right.
So
Yep.
it was like a good spot to pause, because it was
I think it's not.
it was the end
It
of
would be
this
after this.
Yes.
end
Yeah,
of this coming
Correct.
session.
right after this.
But the end
We're
of
now-
this session
Oh my
was
God.
midway through a thing.
Yeah.
Oh my god, this was Taco Day.
Yep.
Yep.
It was
I
all.
love Taco Day.
It was great.
Yeah, Taco Day was so
Okay.
good.
It's our-
It was Taco
the-
Day.
Anyone listening to this, if you ever eat tacos, it's very important to eat it with. You have to put lime juice on your taco. This is what I learned this day.
Follow the new thing about tacos.
I'm very proud
This is the
that
best.
you have that in your life now.
Yeah, right.
And this was the last. We're now starting here. I mean, we're gonna pause here and come back to it next time. But this was the last session we had in person prior to.
There's a very
quarantine.
sad note on
Yeah.
Paul's sheet. It says 328 equals next. And
Yeah.
Huh?
21st, you have written down on the, if you go back a page, it says March 28th was our planned next session, and then the world caught on fire, and then we didn't
Yeah.
meet again until June.
Oh,
Yeah.
D&D movie night. Yeah,
Aw.
we put that off for a long time too.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
One thing I want to do
Oh,
when we start up
history.
the next recording session is I'd like to get, just because they were really well written, I'd like to get the notes from the actual story from Jared, and if we can like record that on here, that would be a
Yeah.
cool thing to
Yeah,
say.
yeah.
So just 'cause
Yes.
Definitely.